Right, Dominic Cummings is gone, or at least he will be gone by the end of the year, by Christmas. So, what does this mean? I mean, it's interesting that this is just a year since the Boris Johnson won an emphatic 80-seat victory, and for many of us, we thought that it looked at that stage like they could be in power for 10 years, maybe 15 years, run by that triumvirate of Gove, Boris Johnson, and Dominic Cummings. And I know Dominic Cummings wrote a blog in January 2020 saying that he wanted to take on all the misfits and weirdos, and so that his own role would be less relevant and he could step back within about a year. But I think, given what we know of his character type, and also given what he's been trying to do in recent days by getting Lee Kane promoted, and then when he couldn't get Lee Kane promoted, trying to get Chloe Watson promoted, I think it was clear that what he wanted to do was have the complete set of the Vote Leave gang that are personally dedicated to him actually in a position of power whereby he wouldn't need to be minding and checking everything, but could swan off, pursue some other interests, but also whether he was there or external, they would listen to him. Now it looks as though that team is largely going to be sort of cleared out. And I'm sure he'll try and keep a few bunkered in over the next few months. But for the most part, he and a large chunk of his influence is going. Now, what does this mean for British science, given that Dom is such a science fan? He was championing it during the Vote Leave campaign. In fact, right at the beginning of the Vote Leave campaign, he was saying, exit the EU, take back control, invest in science and the NHS. And in fact, if you look up Vote Leave on Twitter, you know that invest in the NHS and science, or I can't remember which way around, is still there on the Vote Leave Twitter handle. And some of his early endeavors with creating video and content was around science. He professed to champion science, invite scientists into his team. And then in the Conservative manifesto, they promised a doubling of science funding during this term, and also the establishment of a UK ARPA copied from the US ARPA. So now that is off, what's that mean? Surely that's bad for science, right? If he was a champion of science right at the heart of government. Not quite, because the Conservative manifesto was not the only one to promise a doubling of science in 2019. And in fact, back in 2017, all three of Lib Dems, Conservatives, and Labour promised a doubling of science funding over the next few years. This is after years of science having been starved out. So what the referendum did, because science came to the fore so much, and the threat to the science community of Brexit, that all three parties then stepped up and realized, we've been flat funding science, whereas the EU has been dumping in a whole load of funds and networks for our scientists. We need to be able to cover this ourselves. So that caused that switch up in that game. Nevertheless, we've just come through a pandemic, and budget considerations are tight, let's say. So gushing a whole load of money into science, even though it makes sense for the long run, and Dominic Cummings would certainly have propped that up and pushed that into various different places. Nevertheless, with him gone, the Treasury team might want to take another look at science funding. So there is a risk that it goes down. Nevertheless, in terms of allocation of science funding, if Cummings was still in place, then it would all be done according to his personal whim. The thing that scared me about the 2019 Conservative manifesto was the UK ARPA line, the copy of DARPA. I know from 2016 when I met Dom and talked to him about this, or we all know from his blogs before, that this idea of a UK DARPA has been his obsession and pet project for quite a while. So the fact that it just slap bang in the same terms, landed in the Conservative Manifesto of 2019, told you everything that you needed to know about science policy. It would be run by Dom. And as soon as they got into power, that's how it was all set up. And this is even though the UK science landscape had changed from 2014 and 2016 to 2019, with UKRI being the one-stop shop for all the funding and the oversight of how you invest in the science landscape in the UK. So the fact that this DARPA thing was just thrown in anyway, without any consideration for how it actually fits in the landscape, goes to show how the whole science policy would be run. So with Dominic Cummings gone, it's more likely that you're going to have more sensible input as to how money is spent and how the science landscape is structured. What does this mean for UK-EU relations? Well, the main determining factor there is actually about the financial arrangement that we could come to with the EU for associated membership. The EU is demanding that the UK pay a lot. I mean, a lot extra. And that is because they know that if we don't sign up to the EU science programme, then that's, a big diminution of UK science. But they can demand a lot because countries like France and Germany are not just paying their way on the science programme, they're also paying for investment in the regional development of a lot of the Eastern European countries as well to bring it into the network. So the UK has got that calculation on board. And even though Dominic Cummings wasn't central to it, nevertheless, I'm sure his view on UK-EU science collaboration, if it introduced anything, would have introduced sort of cynicism and cold water. So I think for the most part, that's all indicates that Dominic Cummings going is likely to be a healthier dynamic. One thing that I do worry about, and this was tweeted out by James Wilson before, was that Amanda Soloway, who's the Secretary of State for Science, had been saying recently that the new head of the UK ARPA has to be a science expert. It has to be someone with real expertise in that area. But yet it is now rumoured in the FT that a lot of mandarins around Whitehall are expecting the new head of UK ARPA to essentially be Dominic Cummings. And I can quite imagine that could be part of the deal that Dominic was prepping or would now prep, part of the agreement with Boris Johnson, that he comes out of number 10, allows that sort of sweep through, but then he gets to hold the reins on his pet project that he has been designing and thinking about for many a year. And so even though he wouldn't be a scientist, nevertheless, he would sit on top of it. And I can quite imagine that happening, given what we've seen with Dido Harding, completely not the right person for a science-led institute like the National Institute of Health Protection or even the test and trace system. But nevertheless, pat on the back, friends get to be given top projects running science programs or science-related programs. So that is one thing I'm worried about, and I think that would really hit the UK science credibility hard. I mean, I'm sure he'll be involved with it in one way, shape, or form, but I think to actually have that such a top role would be extremely damaging. And also, I mean, bluntly, we don't even know what UK ARPA is going to do, given again that UKRI was meant to be the one-stop shop for everything science. If you have another institute to the side of it, another body to the side of it, what's it going to do that neatly complements what UKRI doesn't do? Is it going to be blue skies and investment in hot new ideas, or is it going to be small, successful innovation companies being helped out and carried by government over the valley of death so that you actually have bigger mid-scale or larger companies in the UK portfolio? We still don't know yet, because all of that policy is adrift, despite it having been there in the Conservative manifesto fait accompli. So anyway, I'll wrap it up there, but I'll wrap it up with this. And that is with a quote from the Ballad of Reading Gaol. And it goes like this: each man kills the thing he loves. And I remember reading that poem by Oscar Wilde and thinking, that's a bit of a naff line. I don't know anyone who's gone and killed the, it sounds very dramatic, but I don't know anyone who's actually gone and killed the thing they love. I think, however, in this particular case, Dominic Cummings does love British science, or the idea of British science and British science success, and yet he has to date very much been killing it, and would continue to do so in government or in an ARPA position like this. Quite frankly, because Brexit, the whole dynamics around Brexit and the flavour of Brexit have really damaged UK science already. Brexit will continue to do that. And I also think that pursuing UK science in a sort of big projects run from the centre by a science fan, rather than it being driven by the science community, which is properly invested in, all has served to hurt us a lot. So yeah, I'll leave it there.